So I've been given the thankless task of trying to keep you awake after that wonderful lunch. In order to do that, we need to make some noise and thank Roz and Emily for putting this whole thing together. Like most of the people who've been here today, I got here by indirection and misdirection and some detours. So I should tell you that although I call myself a restaurant consultant now, I began my career doing graduate work in economics, which has nothing to do with anything, and got hired by a publishing company to create a restaurant business newspaper. The reasons why I got hired are too long to go into, but I did, and it was called Nation's Restaurant News, and it's still called Nation's Restaurant News, but I'm not there anymore because I met a fellow who became my partner. His name is Joe Baum, and he had just gotten the contract to plan every restaurant in the World Trade Center when it was just a hole in the ground. And he was looking for somebody to work with him. And since I figured I wasn't going to be an economist and I could always be an editor, I may as well become a food consultant. So we started our career in the 1970s, the outcome of which was, among other things, Windows on the World, which we opened in 1976, and then we won a worldwide competition to open it again in 1996 and operated it until somebody flew a plane into the building. And in the intervening years, we did the world's first 3 food courts. We've worked around the world: Singapore, Australia, Taiwan. Never worked in Brooklyn, but I was born there. But I do understand there are a fair number of people from Brooklyn here, so that's a good sign, because that's where the entrepreneurs are coming from. So we're going to have to hustle, but I want to start with a number, and it'll explain why we're all here. The number is 10. The top 10 branded food manufacturers lost, and the second number is 4% of their market share in the last 5 years, and they've lost all that massive amount of business to emerging young companies like the ones we've been hearing about. Many of today's speakers who are more entrepreneurial, have better media savvy, and are better trusted by consumers. So this is the perfect place for this kind of conversation. We're going to have to hustle here because I'm going to get through 20 slides in 20 minutes, and I'm off and running. The biggest trend in the food business has nothing to do with food. It's the crazy growth of food delivery by companies like Uber and Amazon and Google. They don't make food. They're just a bunch of logistics experts that are breeding a new generation of American couch potatoes. People who want it now and who love the idea of not having to go out and fetch it. So this is where technology, convenience, and the buy button on your smartphone become a big multi-billion-dollar disruption of the food industry for the year ahead. And just look at some of the outfits, many of them startups, who are fighting for delivery share just in Seattle. And you get an idea of how big this food trend is. What's in it for Amazon or Google, you might ask? They get more data about you, what you eat, where you get it, how often you pay for it, how you get it often, how you pay for it. It's all very valuable stuff when they put it together with other information that they also collect about you. Here's the second most important trend, is getting all the artificial stuff out of food wherever possible and as fast as possible. Preservatives, additives, colorings. These are the things that have been battered by the food press for 20 years now, and giant food manufacturers, food processors, and restaurant chains are now just beginning to wake up. We're seeing a big shift from making food decisions based on price. I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. You didn't see that. So we're seeing a big shift from making food decisions based on price to making them on long-developed sets of values. And these are consumer values that have emerged from the growing mistrust of large manufacturers and food companies. And that's one of the reasons why food from small producers is outselling big name brands on supermarket shelves. So we're looking not just at nutritional shift in the tides, we're looking at a big shift in a social valuation that goes across all generations. And this could be a full-day seminar, but basically consumers are demanding to know who made it, where did it come from, what's in it for me, and there's lots of scrambling for what we call clean menus and transparent labels. I should tell you that there's a fair amount of wiggle room here. Artificial stuff is being replaced by natural stuff, but you need to know that natural strawberry flavor didn't come from real strawberries either. So we're still getting additives, we're just not getting artificial additives, whatever that means. So this is just for fun. But there's some serious truth behind it. Chili's restaurants spent $750,000 on research and development just to get a shine on their buns to make them more Instagrammogenic to a new generation of consumers. Not kidding. It's a trend. Next trend. Times change. You used to undercook your vegetables, remember? So they were nice and green and crispy. Now we burn the hell out of them. It's a very chefy thing to do, and interestingly, it adds a deep layer of flavor to many dishes. You can do this at home. You can incinerate all your leftover vegetables in a hot oven or a broiler. Pulverize them into ash in your Cuisinart, mix it with some salt or even some mayonnaise, and congratulate yourself. You've got a new condiment in your kitchen, and you are saintly because you haven't dumped your food waste into the trash bin. If you bake your own bread, feel free to dump the ashes in the dough. It actually works. I've done it. So speaking of vegetables, here's a really important trend. We've reached the tipping point in gastronomy where vegetables are getting equal billing with animal protein, sometimes even star billing. One fan. Two fans. We owe it all to President George Bush, who, in hating broccoli, created a pro-vegetable backlash. And this, you may not be old enough, but this is exactly what he said. Now, this doesn't forgive him for fathering the subsequent President Bush, proving that there are unintended consequences in all of our actions. Donald Trump is yet to reveal his gastronomic preferences, but I'm not particularly optimistic. We're seeing the term vegetable butcher appearing around the country. Italy has one. We had a vegetable sommelier in our long-gone 3-star market bar and dining rooms just up the street in the former World Trade Center. Indeed, vegetables are now getting the care that chefs formerly lavished only on meat. It's a perfect confluence of consumer concerns. Concerns about animal protein in general, about hormones and antibiotics in meat, about how cattle are housed and fed, and concerns about cows pooping up the environment with methane and polluting our waterways, which you heard this morning with their effluent, and concerns about the overall anxiety about our diets and about the health of the planet. So vegetables are being treated as eye candy and as the most important element of the dish. There's, for example, a piece of fish beneath these vegetables, but the greenery is the message. I was interviewed recently by CBS TV about the growing acceptance of veggie burgers. My take is that an item that was once mass manufactured and tasted as if it had been run over by a bus now is in the hands of creative chefs and entrepreneurs who are turning it into something worth eating for its own merits. They're not vegetables masquerading as fake beef. They're vegetables for their own sake. Having it both ways, here's a chicken burger that McDonald's is serving in Japan, and it's studded with edamame, corn, and carrot. They won't feed us that well. A Wendy's has a veggie burger. White Castle has a veggie burger. So there you go, nutrition via the drive-thru. Sounds like progress to me. So, next trend. Until recently, salted caramel was the go-to flavoring for desserts. But we're now on to a newer trend, hot and sweet combined. So we're going from this to this, Sriracha ice cream with chocolate chips. As you'd expect, the folks who make this are from, you're right, Brooklyn. And going back to trend number one, they deliver their product to your door with a monthly subscription. Now, here's maybe a more accessible example. Adding a whole range of heat levels transforms this sweet dessert cliche that you're now tired of seeing in every restaurant. It's now become something like this, which lights up your taste buds and leaves you with a memorable ending for your meal. The perpetually inventive Chobani people are right on trend here. Mango sriracha yogurt. I'm all for spiced honey, but the booze people have gone one step too far, ruining perfectly good bourbon, not only with lashings of honey, but then spiking this Franken booze with ghost peppers. A friend of ours in London has a bottle of Scotch whiskey aged in barrels that first were used to ferment Tabasco sauce, an experiment that thankfully fizzled. But riding on Starbucks coattails, a Rhode Island distributor has made pumpkin spiced whiskey. So instead of drinking these Franken drinks, I suggest you have a fun outing and visit all the small batch craft distillers in, of course, Brooklyn. It's an afternoon of good tastings of trendy brown whiskey. Even snacks are getting spicy. But more important, if you want to follow taste trends, you'd better examine the aisles in your supermarket. You'll discover two things. Snacks are moving from sweet to savory, and they're moving to ever spicier flavor profiles, and they're projecting an image, if not necessarily the reality, of being healthy for you, or at least less lethal. Here are two examples of the healthification trend in which, in this case, quinoa and chia seeds, which are two big nutrition-laden buzzwords, lend a health halo to a product that you probably could have done without otherwise. You will find lots of this stuff in the snack aisles of your supermarket, so do some exploring. You'll be amazed what you can find in the healthification business, such as these enhanced waters, which, if you use them all, eventually can make you a perfect person. These are called, think of the shrink bills you save. These are called so-called functional foods in the industry, and they are very big in snacks and liquid refreshment. Of course, if enhanced waters don't do the trick, there also are functional series for your heart, your brain function, and your otherwise limping libido. I'm not making this up. We think this is the health spice of the year. Turmeric contains curcumin, which is claimed to cure practically everything in India, where when it's consumed with the vegetable of the year, which happens to be cauliflower, is claimed to prevent prostate cancer and all kinds of other ravaging diseases. And Indians eat lots of cauliflower and turmeric. Of course, that doesn't explain why they have a very short lifespan of these same Indians, but that's another story. You know turmeric, even if you're not aware of it, because that's what gives mustard its color, and lends its color to curry powder. It's a natural food color, and you'll find it being added to ice cream, which is on the left. Ice cream and other dairy products, in addition to chips, crackers, and all kinds of snack foods, and even to pasta. Here's another example of the healthification of snacking trends. A big switch to vegetable juices, as you've noticed from all the juice bars that are opening around town, and closing if you blink your eye. But packaged goods manufacturers are burying vegetable tastes in the sweetness of fruit juice. So you will now see on shelves in your food markets things like this: carrot juice mixed with mango, orange, and turmeric. There's turmeric again, and spinach with apple juice, and all other kinds of vegetable and juice combinations. And just for fun, this will never be a snacking trend, but if you're in Japan, stop by McDonald's for a plate of French fries dribbled with dark and white chocolate. Although, come to think of it, chocolate-covered potato chips aren't particularly outlandish, are they? More healthification. These are, in fact, broccoli, cheddar, potato chips. And the broccoli is added to give a luster of good nutrition to offset the negative effects of all that fat and grease. And for those of you who possibly had a Jewish grandmother, you'll recognize these ingredients as likely to send you to the nearest hospital. Ice creams are getting healthified too by incorporating vegetables, sometimes along with fruit. Yogurt is getting the same treatment, most notably the Blue Hill brand, but there are others coming along. The healthification business starts to get a little iffy. Rice Krispies got its hand slapped by claiming falsely, as it turned out, that its cereal boosted immunity. The package was quietly withdrawn from the market. Here's maybe a trend. In the last 5 years, pasta dish sales are down 25% in Italy, 13% in the rest of Europe, and they're down about 5% here, as Americans focus on proteins and shedding carbs, or shunning gluten, or subscribing to paleo dieting. Even carboholics have more nutritious alternatives than plain old wheat flour. So you're seeing pasta made with quinoa, chickpeas, lentils, spelt, barley, chia, and chefs will be experimenting with vegetable ribbons, zucchini, asparagus, beets, sweet potatoes, for example, replacing pasta. And look for pastas offering a full serving of vegetables, purees of spinach, tomatoes, carrots, you name it, incorporated into the dough. Who knows? Maybe spaghetti squash will finally have its limelight moment. And look for pastas offering, as I said, full servings of vegetables. Here you can see how that takes place. Another trend is a resurgence of Jewish food. The dash signifies that we're talking about chef-driven modern Jewish cookery, or even modern Jewish heresy, rather than the heavyweight European dishes that we're used to considering. This pastrami quesadilla is heresy enough. You heard from Russ and Daughters this morning, and they really were at the forefront of a trend, because there are now Jewish delis and Jewish appetizing cafes springing up, not just in New York, but all around the country. So here is a traditional smoked salmon brunch that's putting on airs. It's being served on a classic English tea and petit fours stand. How come now? It's interesting because chefs everywhere are exploring their own ethnic roots and cuisines. And you see this, for example, in Peruvian, Korean, Mexican, Chinese, along with all of the Middle Eastern cuisines and Israel. So if we call them heritage cuisines, let's call them that, they're being re-examined by a new wave of chefs who are exploring the stories behind them and reinterpreting them. In the case of the new Jewish foodways, chefs are juggling their grandparents' culinary traditions with modernity. And they're adding distinctly non-kosher ingredients, like another heresy, bacon-wrapped matzo balls, which, by the way, are sinfully good. We see a rapid mainstream of dishes that no longer seem so ethnic. After all, where in the US can't you get a bagel? Now it's hummus's turn, this one topped with peas and cashews from a hole-in-the-wall restaurant in Philadelphia serving nothing but hummus. It's coming soon to Chelsea Market. And keep an eye out for falafel, shown here in a sandwich wrap, but also being used as a vegetable accompaniment to a traditional main course, or as a crunch-fried coating for fish and lamb. So this is going on across the country, and it's very exciting to see. Another trend, a big shift in the last 5 years, has been the growth of fast casual dining. The archetype here is Chipotle, which didn't invent the style, but ran like hell with it. You get almost restaurant food. You get it almost as fast as fast food. You get lots of options to go into your meal. You get mostly fresh food. You actually see it prepared. You interact with the person making or assembling your meal, and the check falls between fast food and casual dining. All this works because buying a meal, if you think about it, is an emotional transaction, unlike buying a head of lettuce. And this format gets you as close to your food as possible. In fact, it's the only restaurant segment that's growing. Here you see the growing spread between fast casual and fast food. Another big player is Sweet Green, which has been hoovering up tons and tons of investor money. It specializes in made-to-order salads and wears a big environmental story on its sleeve. Everything that can be fast casualized is. For example, this is a sushi rito. Basically, it's a sushi wrapped in seaweed and then wrapped again in a tortilla. This is the basis for a couple of restaurant chains in the West Coast. We haven't got one in Brooklyn yet, but I'm sure we will. Another hot chain around New York, who you heard from this morning, is Dig In, which uses the same service system as Chipotle, but with a menu based on interesting seasonal ingredients. And this is Junzi, a hot number in New Haven started by a bunch of overeducated Yale PhDs who stayed up too late one night. It specializes in wraps and bowls of authentic Chinese ingredients, and it has lines out the door. It's highly successful, and they're currently looking for a location in New York, after which they will go public and take over the world. But also being fast casualized in a hurry is all forms of sandwiches, pizzas, stir-fried, sushi, as you just saw, hamburger, think Shake Shacks or Five Guys, fried chicken, Turkish gyros, barbecue, noodles. Even the halal guys' food carts that you see all around town are opening brick and mortar places in California. And also moving into this fast casual territory are the entrepreneurial types who partake in places like Smorgasburg and then open their own stores. Most of these have what we call a health halo as part of their marketing program. Big name chefs are also moving into the fast casual arena. They see it as lots easier than dealing with costly ingredients, reservation systems, no-shows, flowers, linens, high-priced cooks, waiters, captains, and sommeliers, and all of the rest that goes into upscale dining. So a parade of fast casualizing star chefs now includes Mario Batali, the guys who own 11 Madison Park, David Chang and Bobby Flay in New York, Jose Andres in Washington, Daniel Patterson and Roy Choi in Los Angeles, Rick Bayless in Chicago, Mark Vetri and Jose Garces in Philadelphia. The list is constantly growing. So we're now getting a layer of chef-driven, fast casual restaurants where the food promises to be exciting. Here's another trend worth watching. The country has gone bonkers about food in bowls, especially in fast casual chains. This is poke. Poke is the next raw fish craze after sushi and sashimi. It comes from Hawaii and has spread around the West Coast, and several fast casual startups are opening here. In fact, my presentation to you was really out of date because it was written last week. And this week's New York Times has a story about count them, 4 places that are opening poke places in New York. It's a bit like deconstructed sushi. You get fresh cubes of raw fish tossed generally in a teriyaki kind of marinade with spices and garnitures that are added to your taste and order. And of course, it's served in bowls. These are acai bowls. Acai, if you don't already know, is the berry from the same plant that gives you hearts of palm. Acai pulp is mixed with lots of other fruits, sometimes yogurt, sometimes cereal, sometimes chia seeds, flax seeds, goji berries, cocoa nibs, probiotics, even hemp, and sometimes all of the above in one big bowl. It's very big on the West Coast and coming here. Basically, this is a more healthful version of an ice cream sundae. But if you have it for breakfast and manage to finish a whole bowl, you're good for beyond lunch because the calorie load is enormous. Cold breakfast cereals in supermarkets are taking a nosedive, but hot porridge is gaining traction in restaurants, often served with the same components as acai bowls. Here's one for lunch served at Little Park in New York. And this one is a bowl of cereal gone gourmet. The question is, why bowls? The answers are that bowls make it easier for food to look good, which goes back to what I said earlier about making food more Instagrammable. If properly designed, they're portable and will fit easily in your hand. And more important, there's a bit of psychology at work here. And that has something to do with mother putting a bowl of breakfast cereal in front of you, or a bowl of soup, or a bowl of homey beef stew. It's fascinating. So we're not out of trends, but we're out of time. Here are some of the big issues of the day that we couldn't get crammed into 20 minutes. Some of these trends could fill a full afternoon of deeper analysis. And so I invite you to do some exploring on your own, or perhaps our fabulous organizers of this conference will create sub-conferences during the year on some of these subjects. So it's been a fun trip, and I'm glad to note that if you stayed awake through all of it, that we finished together at the very same time. Thank you.